In the previous lecture, we introduced passive transport, which is a pyrielectric chemical gradient transport of materials across membranes without energy consumption. When molecules or ions are transported through the cell membrane uphill against the concentration gradient or electrical potential or a pressure gradient, this process is called active transport. The carrier protein and energy are necessary for active transport. Different substances that are actively transported through at least some cell membranes, including sodium ions, potassium ions, calcium ions, iron ions, hydrogen ions, chloride ions, several different sugars, and most of amino acids. Active transport is divided into two types according to the source of energy used to cause the transport: primary active transport and secondary active transport. In primary active transport, the energy is derived directly from breakdown of the ATP or of some other high-energy phosphate compound. An active transport system that pumps sodium ions outward through the membrane and at the same time pumps the potassium ions from the outside to the inside of the cell to maintain the sodium and potassium concentration differences across the cell membrane. As well, for establishing a negative electrical voltage inside the cell, indeed, this pump is also the base of nerve function, transmitting nerve signals throughout the nervous system. It is present in all cells of the body. The carrier protein consists of two globular proteins, a large alpha subunit and a small beta subunit. In the subunit, there are three receptor sites for binding sodium inside the cell, two receptor sites for binding potassium outside the cell, and ATPase activity near the sodium binding sites. Three sodium ion and two potassium ion binding on the receptor sites at the same time, activating ATPase, breaking down of ATP, the energy of one high-energy phosphate bond of ATP release the conformational change of the carrier protein. Two potassium ion move into the cell, and three sodium ion moving out of the cell against the concentration gradients. So, what is secondary active transport? The transport of some substances through the cell membrane against the concentration gradient must be connected with the transport of some ions at the same time. In primary active transport, the energy is derived directly from breakdown of ATP or of some other high-energy phosphate compound. In secondary active transport, the energy is derived secondly from energy that has been stored in the form of ionic concentration differences of secondary molecular or ionic substances between the two sides of a cell membrane, created originally by primary active transport. The ions diffuse through the membrane down their concentration gradients, which are created previously by the primary active transport, and provide a storehouse of energy for transporting the substances against their concentration gradients. For example, sodium glucose symbol transport. The carrier protein have two binding sites on its exterior side, one for sodium and one for glucose. The sodium concentration is very high on the outside and very low inside. As the two binding sites are both attached, the conformational change occurs, and both the sodium and the glucose are transported to the inside of the cell at the same time. The energy comes from sodium concentration gradient previously created by the primary active transport, the sodium ion potassium ion pump. In this summary, we mainly discuss the active transport, which is different from the passive transport. The active transport is a transport of substances across the membrane against the concentration gradient, so it needs to consume energy. According to the way of energy consumption, active transport can be divided into primary active transport and secondary active transport. In this way, we discuss the transmembrane transport of small molecules. Thank you for watching. Bye.